And why don't we go ahead and start off with a formal call to order. We could go around and state our name and organization. That would be great for our first meeting. A little formal, but appreciate it, just as I learn everyone's names in particular for our record. Why don't we start online with Jason and then Curtis? Jason, I see your microphone is
yeah, I was trying to get my video camera to turn on. There you go. Okay, Jason Bai, Pasco Yaqui Tribe. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Kurt Lewick. I'm a non-jurisdictional member, but I do have to mention that I did work for Pima County for several years and for ADOT when I was a very young man. So thank you very much.
Morning, Curtis. Nala, if you want to go, and then we can go clockwise.
Morning, everyone. I'm Nalo. I'm with the town of Sarita.
Nathan Barrett. I'm with Nalo.
Andy Bemis with the City of Tucson.
John Bernal, non-jurisdictional member, retired from Pima County.
Dan Gabbio with PAG RTA.
Carmine DeBonis, Pima County.
Paul Kiesler, Town of Oro Valley.
Fausto Burrell, Town of Marana.
Jim DeGrood, City of Tucson on assignment, here working with PAG.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome and thank you for being here. Next on the agenda, we have election of the chair and vice chair. Do we have any nominations for chair for the policy subcommittee?
Yes, I have a suggestion or two.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. My opinion is that the leadership of this subcommittee really should be jurisdictional members. So I'm not going to nominate John. John, you don't have to worry. But I would like to nominate Carmine DeBonis as chair and Paul Kiesler as vice chair of the committee. I think they both have been around long enough that they really get a grasp for everything and would do exceedingly well in those roles. So thank you.
Thank you, Curtis. Okay, we have a nomination for chair and vice chair. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Mr. Chair, you have the hot seat if you like. You're welcome to sit there.
So I'll stay where I'm seated currently. Thank you so much. And thank you all of you for the honor and the trust in serving in that capacity. So with that, we'll kick off and I'll turn it over to staff to start the conversation for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to provide a very brief overview of what we're here to do today, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jim, Mr. Chair, if that's okay with you, to dig into the weeds for item number 3. But we'd like to start with just a quick review of our TMC bylaws for the policy subcommittee. Oh, sorry, Curtis, you have your hand raised. Did you have a question or comment?
No, I'm very elderly and I forgot to lower my hand.
All good, all good. So Isa, if you're able to pull up the agenda and scroll down to the Article 6 of the bylaws. I just wanted to give a quick overview of what we're here to do for our bylaws. And then as part of this item, we'll also be going over a high-level overview of the RTA Administrative Code and our policies, objectives, and procedures, or POPs. Isa, if you could. Yeah. Oh, sorry. And while that's coming up, of course, the main reason we're here today is because our TMC and our board have provided us some direction that we need to update our policies and procedures for the RTA to help us make sure that we're in a great position for delivery of RTA Next. And as a note, just yesterday, the County Board of Supervisors approved RTA Next to move forward for the ballot in March. And so we have our marching orders now, and this is going to be one of the major focus areas over the next couple of months, is updating our policies and procedures in preparation of outreach effort. And then Isa, if you don't mind just scrolling down to Article 6, we can skip through the other bylaws details, and I just wanted to read this very brief paragraph real quick. So the TMC Policy Subcommittee is a standing committee that is convened as the need arises. The policy subcommittee shall consist of one member from each jurisdiction, either the jurisdictional member or their designee, plus 2 private sector members appointed by the TMC chair. The policy subcommittee may be directed to analyze and make recommendations on revisions to the RTA policies, objectives, and procedures, and evaluate the recommendations from value analysis projects. The TMC chair may request the policy subcommittee to convene on other matters as appropriate, and the policy subcommittee shall make its recommendations to the TMC. So that is our charge with this subcommittee. So just wanted everyone to be on the same page there. And with that, we can continue, Isa, down to the next item in the agenda. Oh,
If I may, Dan, Chair, the entire policy here was written for the original RTA. Do we need to adopt a new one for the RTA next? Because I mean, all the references are all back to 2006 and whatnot. So as we move into a completely new program, should we have just a kind of a clean slate? I have no objections. I mean, it's a good policy. It's good procedures, but just update it for the new.
Chair. So the short answer is yes, but keep in mind that we have completion of RTA 1.
Mm-hmm.
So these policies, although looking forward to RTA next, need to also address the completion of RTA 1. So not an issue in terms of date. Just know that they're not just for RTA next. My expectation would be that we would also use them for the RTA 1 projects that are yet to be completed. Since we've got about probably 5, maybe 6 years, that'll be important.
Mr. Ortega, thank you.
You're welcome.
thank you, Paul. Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
we can continue. Isa, if you don't mind scrolling down to the next, right there. Perfect. And I'm going to turn it over to Jim, Mr. Chair, to get into the weeds.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the TMC Policy Subcommittee. Good to be seeing and working with you all again. As you know, with the original RTA plan, we adopted an administrative code. This is it. It has a lot of material in it that frankly is not relevant any longer. We also are in a position where we have to update it to incorporate new projects within it. Look at the policies that maybe we're not really prove not to be relevant. Strip them out, update the policies, make them what we need to have them look like now on a going forward basis. The administrative control code included a description of the purpose, authority, and plan development process, which we'll need to update. It includes individual project descriptions with scopes, expenditures, and schedules. Those I know I have shipped out to the jurisdictions for comment. I've gotten a lot of it back. I thank you very much. We'll be compiling those, looking at them. We'll be looking at trying to take in the specific information that we've gotten from all the jurisdictions and then refine it so we're using common language across all of the descriptions. Our objective was to try to keep it as high level as we possibly could, because we know projects are going to change over time, and that what we're anticipating now, we may need a little flexibility for in the future, but we want to identify what the key elements are. What are the truly important elements within the scope so we can describe it to the public. We have measures for outlining how we have accountability, oversight, and transparency. So there are sections in there that speak to the CART committee. We're going to need to update that. Is that where we want to go? The original administrative code did not contemplate the technical management committee. It actually came into being after, as we were starting to look at some of the policy questions. We chose to reconstitute the TMC, which TMC had actually been created to help formulate the 2006 plan, along with the CAC at the time, both of those went away with the adoption of the plan. We created a CART, but we didn't perpetuate the TMC. We subsequently did that as we were getting into things like value engineering analysis and such that, really were focuses that we wanted to take a look at early on in the RTA. It also includes the policies, objectives, and procedures. That's another area or the POPs. That's something that we need to update. We did update it 3 or 4 times. Actually, it was initially adopted with the RTA administrative code in 2006. And then we looked at I think another 3 revisions. This would be the 4th revision to those POPs. And I think the last time we looked at it was in 2014. So they're well overdue. Then in addition to that, we have within the administrative code a lot of appendices, things that cover basically give you the resolutions that went into the formation of the RTA, as well as public involvement documentation and copies of the relevant statutes. So we've got those to update because those statutes have changed since we adopted the initial RTA plan. And then we also, in the RTA plan, our administrative code appendix, we also included an appendix that looked at where were we anticipating the other sources of funding to come from. So it had very specifically identified what the commitments were for things such as impact fees. And I think the 97 bond election or bond monies that were going to be brought into it were also identified in that, along with some of the known federal and state funds. So those will all go into this as we're going forward. We now have a target date for completion. We have been asked, I think you may have seen an earlier version of this that drug out into next year. We have been told that that's too long. We need to hustle, and that we'll be looking at getting this done by the end of October. I know that's a lot of work that we have to grind through, and we appreciate your commitment to this. We'll talk in a little bit about how we want to move forward with meetings, whether we continue on this. I know I asked a lot of people to kind of hold free the 8 to 10 in the morning on Wednesdays in perpetuity. We can revisit that and look at whether we want to take it in some larger periods where we may sit down and do perhaps a charrette or something. So that's it at your pleasure.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate that. Any questions for Jim? Okay, hearing none, turn it back to you, Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Jim. One other thing I want to do very quickly, Isa, if you're able to scroll down to the next page in the agenda, I just wanted to recognize that we did receive some past comments from the TMC and the board, and we haven't lost sight of those. So we've highlighted them here in your full agenda packet in yellow. And so as we start digging into the weeds, we're going to make sure that we address each of these comments as part of this process before we ultimately recommend our changes up to the TMC and the TMC to the board for ultimate approval. So just wanted to acknowledge that to make sure that we don't lose sight of those important comments that came in, as well as any other comments that you all might have as part of this process. Okay. And with that, Mr. Chair, if it's at your pleasure and this body's pleasure, we could begin digging into the POPs, if that would be helpful to start that now.
I think it's a good starting spot.
Great.
Okay. Well, great.
Back over to Jim then.
All right, Isa, if you can
Work
pull it
for
up,
the
I went ahead and set this for screen sharing. So we'll dive into it. Just wanted to start out by saying thanks to all of you who have provided your comments on the POPs. One of the most prolific commenters was Mr. Luick, and I thank him for that. Most of those comments that he put in there I've gone ahead and accepted. So we'll be starting with a version of the POPs I believe you all have a copy of it in front of you now. For those of you, if you don't need or need another additional copy, I've got some more copies over on the side table over there. But that's marked August of 2025 draft. We're now, when this pops up on the screen, you'll see it's going to be the September 3rd, 2025 revision. So we'll be doing those in real time. At any rate, some things to know about the POPs. In the original administrative code, we actually had two versions. One that dealt with the roadway element, the safety element, and the environment and economic vitality element, and another that dealt with the transit element. They really were very much redundant, with the exception of the transit element, including some very specific language about the projects, the individual projects. I've gone ahead and looked at these and made the administrative decision, recommendation, whatever you want to call it, to go ahead and merge them and take the specificity out, because I think as we're talking about projects, we're talking about them very generically rather than identifying individual particular projects. So within the project descriptions themselves, we'll give more detail as to how they operate. Issa, are you able to pull that over? There we go. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, so in terms of the title, if you looked at earlier versions of it, the title was listed the environmental and economic vitality element, safety and roadway. I took that out of the top, and any reference to this being not included, any reference to not including transit elements within it have been taken out. Scrolling through here, I have shortened it up a little bit. If you want to take a look at this, or if you have any feedback, please go ahead and shout out, and we'll stop and take a look at things. First page is pretty general. Talks about the initial adoption. We probably want to add some language once it's adopted. At such time as we have an affirmative vote, we probably want to come back in and add to this the language about the RTA next. But for now, this will operate for us or work for us in the current RTA projects, as well as be ready to handle the incoming new projects.
Jim, before you proceed, Paul had a question.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. Mr. Chair, I didn't really get a chance to really look at this till last night. I appreciate this time that we're spending to go through this, but could we provide additional comments afterwards, like maybe give us a week or so to be able to provide whatever our thoughts are?
This is a working process, you bet.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we have a time constraint. We want to move these along as quickly as we can. I think, as we talk through these, some of these issues may, we may find some areas that we want to work on. Okay. So yeah, one thing that I failed to mention that we have to add and really spend some focus time on is the financial side of things, how we deal with changes in revenue over time. We have a target revenue amount that we've set the plan to. The only thing that is certain about that target is that that's not going to be what we end up collecting. It'll be either higher or lower. We don't know where it's going to end up. We need to put into place a mechanism to adapt to change over time. How do we address that impact in revenue on what we distribute to the various elements? I know there's language that was adopted by the RTA board dealing with revenues that come in that exceed the forecast. But we also have to look at what happens with what happens over time as we see growth in costs and expansion beyond the 2026 dollars that we've expressed everything.
Jim, and if I may, maybe starting bigger picture, and then as we proceed through this process, narrowing down to the specifics, I would find it helpful, and others may as well, if we went through the sections and said, this is what this section addresses.
Excellent.
And then talk about the edits that have been made to that section, really to socialize this draft with the committee as we're then moving towards having more detailed discussion on changes. That might be helpful.
Great.
Carmen, I think that's a great idea. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Thanks.
The first section is basically the purpose. We've talked a little bit about that. Then we go into the policies. And within the policies, this is where, this has probably been the most important portion of the administrative code, in that it deals with what we'll pay for and what we won't pay for. And, that's, I know we've had comments about landscaping and art and utilities. Those have been the big rub points for us historically. And I think there's still interest in discussing them. I've made some recommendations in here. We'll kind of scroll down to it. There is, I know Curtis made a comment about the, about section 2, about this being the foundations. Curtis, do you want to talk a little bit about your comment there on paragraph 2 within the policies?
Yeah, paragraph 2. Yeah. So my comment was, I think it was the question, Jim, is that it, the yellow highlight?
Yeah.
Is this a potential conflict point where the non-RTA programs potentially supersede the RTA plan? I guess what I'm talking about is what's happening at over on the other side of the house at PAG. And the interrelationship between those two. And the statutes are unique because the statutes, in my interpretation, create a separate plan and a separate tip for the RTA, which are then integrated into the PAG program. So I think that's kind of what I'm getting at, is how do we work the two together at the same time?
Okay. Why don't we think about this a little bit, see if there's language that we want to add to it, and we can come back to that. Yeah, Paul.
If I may, when the RTA was first put together back in 2004-06, the RTA was a subset of PAG. It was a special set of projects, special set of taxation that was all subset of PAG. That role is kind of reversed over the years, where PAG has kind of been a subset of the RTA, and just hoping that, as we develop these policies and procedures, it gets back to kind of that original framework. Because again, we understand what happened over the recession and the need to be able to supplement, but can we put more, I want to say, locks and bars on the door to be able to, be more judicious on how we affect PAG with RTA. I guess that's where I'm going on.
Yeah. And, one of the things that we've kind of, certainly a lesson learned has been that when we tie up all of that regional money for so long, we don't have any way to address emerging problems. Right. And, really, although an emerging problem that we want to address through the tip has got to emerge over a 5-year period, but nevertheless, it's still, priorities change. We've locked into a 20-year plan.
Right.
We need to respect that that the sources of funds are for different purposes, and I think that's something that we all acknowledge now. And if there's some language in here that will help reinforce that, open to it.
Okay.
Yeah, Jim, getting back to Paul's comment, maybe Paul and I can kind of work together over the next week or so and try to clarify that language a little bit, because I think it's important, and especially important that the public understand how the RTA fits in with the federal requirements for transportation planning and the TIP process and all that. That makes sense, Paul?
It does.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Great.
Jim, Dan had a
Yeah.
comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Curtis and Mr. Vice Chair, both really good points. And I think one thing we also have to acknowledge is that the statute does require us to produce an annual tip. And that's something that we've been talking about internally, and we'll continue to talk about and bring forth some additional information in the future. So we would like to do that in the future, and also acknowledging that since there is a merging of federal funds with RTA Next, the federal side does require some performance measures to be incorporated into the tip. And so if we're going to have one unified tip to cover both the PAG tip and the RTA, that's something we'll need to further discuss on how that looks. With that, through an annual process, there will be plenty of opportunity to discuss with the jurisdictions any changes to project priorities at that time. But of course, also considering RTA Next, we have periods that we've identified as far as priorities for the projects listed. So we'll have to come up with a way to merge the two requirements.
Moving down to the bottom of the page, we do have language in there that speaks to funding. And I've inserted in there language that says that the minimum funding is identified in the approved plan and will be periodically adjusted for inflation and or available revenue. So I think both need to be looked at. How is cost growing? And then how is our revenue growing so that we can address those two challenges, or the opportunity and the challenge. So moving on to, does that seem like reasonable language to put in there? I think we're going to have to come back and have a conversation later on with this process about how frequently we will make adjustments, how we want to report that to the public, and set a formal process and time schedule for when we come back and make adjustments, so that everybody has expectations about when we're going to revisit the plan.
Yeah, Jim, that seems reasonable. A lot of discussion leading up to this point about not having done that maybe as diligently as should have been previously.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on down, we really don't have a whole lot of comment on things until we get down into the paragraph 17, where we speak about what's reimbursable. We have some pretty straightforward things about planning and right-of-way acquisition, safety intersection improvements, small business assistance, project components that are related to capacity and safety, such as lighting, traffic control devices, intelligent transportation systems. We've got transit improvements. There was commentary that we received about bicycle paths and bicycle lanes. There was some commentary about widths. They were not specific as to drawing particular expectations, but my sense is that we're looking at varying widths on bicycle lanes around town, and in some jurisdictions are more aggressively pursuing buffered bike lanes. I don't know whether that's part of the question. Paul, this came from a commentary that came from a combined letter from Saurita and Marana and Oro Valley. Nalo, Paul, do you guys have thoughts on that? Is there, how would you want to approach this?
Sure. If I could start, when we got together to look at this very instance or the very subject, there were really kind of two things on the table. One is, as you mentioned, the buffered bicycle lane, and the other is the METCD definition of what is indeed a bicycle lane. I think that here's an opportunity for us to really kind of address something that I think is not uniform across all the jurisdictions. And that is the instance of bicycle lane as defined by the METCD is a restricted lane for bicycles. And I thought the new METCD would go ahead and kind of lighten that definition, because they have lightened some other areas, but they have not. So do we want to use the term bicycle lane? Do we want to use the term bicycle routes? Now, if it's a buffered bicycle lane, very specifically used for that, that's another element altogether, like another travel lane altogether. And the uniformity is let's set a minimum size, and that was really where the three jurisdictions got together. Let's set a minimum size or maximum size the RTA pays for. Now, if a jurisdiction wants to have either buffers or barriers or wider lanes, you're certainly welcome to do that, and you're welcome to do any enhancement to any project. But again, to stay within budget for the RTA, we have to set parameters of what the RTA will pay for. And that's really where we were going with that, is that, you know, an 8-foot paved shoulder seems reasonable. How you deal with that from a jurisdictional standpoint, let's all get together and really kind of understand what a bicycle route or a bicycle lane is. And then if you want to add, if you have an area of safety concern, you're on a, you know, a high volume in the middle of the city street, that you really want to put that buffer in there for the bicyclists. I encourage that, but at some point it's going to be, you know, is that a specific jurisdictional responsibility or not? And that's where we were going.
Okay. Anybody have thoughts on that?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
John.
I'm reading, Paul, the comment that you all sent in, and it talks about, should an agency wish to expand by adding a dedicated bike lane, the additional cost will be responsibility of that agency. I mean, that kind of suggests to me that we're gonna not encourage bicycling as much as I thought we would as a regional plan. So I think some qualifier in there, unless the route is on a regional bike system or something, would be worthwhile adding to this.
And I don't, John, thank you. I don't want us to get the impression that we're not supporting bicycle lanes or bicycle routes. They're very important for the region. And one of the best things I think that came out of the RTA was that inclusion in all the previous RTA projects. And that provision of a wide shoulder is incredibly important. And honestly, I think, you know, if you look at the kind of the positioning here, if you have an 8-foot paved shoulder, your bicycle takes up roughly 3 feet of that lane. And if they're over towards the outside, that gives a good 5-foot buffer. So that's why we were looking at kind of the safety aspect there of creating that, you know, what's the slogan? Keep bicycles alive, provide 5, something like that. And I think that's what we were trying to honor here, and to progress what was done with RTA into RTA Next, as far as making that a staple, absolutely making it a staple. But again, because we are constrained budgetarily, what can we do that we can uniformly broad brush every project with, and then when projects need more, either we come together as a group to say, okay, well, that one does need more. The RTA can pay for it if it's within our constraints, or whether the jurisdiction needs to pay for that.
Just out of curiosity, do you see I mean, as I'm kind of seeing it, you know, different jurisdictions approach how they deal with their bicyclists differently. I know in some of the jurisdictions we've got, you know, large paved shoulders, and others we've got perhaps more confined roadways with buffering. In others, we've got bike lanes on street, and we've got multi-use paths as well. And, you know, I mean, the multi-use path and bike lanes is probably the, you know, the most premium of those. But if they're on high-speed facilities, you know, I can see merit to it. To some extent, I'm kind of, you know, asking, is this something we need to give guidance on? Or is this something that we trust the jurisdictions to make the right decisions based upon their ridership?
Jim, you know, I was thinking along those lines, and maybe to get back to the idea of, you know, pulling this up to a higher level of discussion. There's several items in this section that have this same theme to them. And I think it would be beneficial for us to have a conversation much more broadly about defining a minimum, or excuse me, a maximum. And in doing so, though, understanding what the jurisdictions are currently doing. So for example, Pima County has adopted, and so have the other jurisdictions, our standards. We have our subdivision and development roadway standards. And so what we want to make sure is that we maintain some continuity within jurisdictions and across the region. So what we would not want to do is be requiring of private development who is doing improvements to meet a current standard and then match up to that with a different standard, right, for these projects identified in the RTA. And so it might be helpful to query the jurisdictions on these different items. We're talking paths right now, but drainage improvements, I see art, landscape and medians, really to understand what is the entirety of the standards we're applying, what's common, and then what can we maybe glean from that and bring ourselves to an approach that might be palatable, right? I think we want to have consistency and allow flexibility. And sometimes those rub up against each other. But I think understanding more holistically what the jurisdictions have adopted from a standards standpoint may help us hone in on the details of what this section ultimately looks like.
Mr. Chair,
Andy?
if I can add to the conversation, I wonder if it might be something we could reference a common or accepted design standard like AASHTO or something, so that jurisdictions are meant to follow their local design guidance that they may have, provided they're consistent with AASHTO design guide for bike lanes or something like that. Just food for thought. And then I'll have to double check, but I think when we went through the cost estimating exercise for the RTA Next projects anyway, I know we're a little bit talking RTA 1 and RTA Next right now, but you're right that in the city of Tucson, we have some of those special areas where, you know, they're especially dangerous for people biking. We wanted to improve safety. So I believe we've cost estimated into the project cost estimates already that buffer or separated feature in that exercise based on the context of the project.
Okay.
Very good.
So I'm hearing a desire to do a little more polling, make sure everybody's comfortable with some of these issues. You know, I definitely hear it on the bicycle facilities. Probably we need to wrap into this the standards for or expectations, treatments, if you will, for multi-use paths, because I know those vary. Further down in this section, I know one of our more contentious topics when we looked at it back in 2014, and John, I think you came up with the language that we ended up with was that we would have utility relocations in specific cases where required by law. I think that was your wordsmithing. That continued to be challenging on some things, particularly, you know, one of the things that I know that we all deal with is, you know, dealing with making adjustments when we're paving. The cost of adjusting the manhole rims and the water boxes, that's always borne by the paving organization. You know, that's not necessarily in law, so we probably ought to, you know, be clear on that. The other one that really was kind of a challenge dealt with sewer facilities and not the sewer main itself. The sewer main itself, it's clear Pima County Regional Water Reclamation District owns and you know has authority over those. However, the house connections, you know, they don't lay claim to it. In fact, they will not maintain them. So it's up to the property owner to do it. But if we're, say, running a storm drain through an area, we're making all these adjustments. Is it fair for the jurisdiction to have to cover the costs of that? Or should those be eligible or ineligible expenses? I think there was a lot of, where we've settled on internally at this point is that they are eligible, but I think this will come up again as people change. So let's get it nailed down. That would be my recommendation. Anybody have concerns with that language, or do we want to do some polling on that?
Paul?
Yeah, I have one to add too. I agree. I fully agree with where you're going with this. Those of us on the fringes where we are converting from old rural roads where, many utilities are in easements. If it's already in an easement, then we have to pay the utility company to go ahead and
Prior rights,
move
yeah.
that. That should be prior rights. Maybe that should be something to be added to this as well, because it is a real project cost, and depending on the utility, it can be quite pricey.
Yeah, and I think that was the intent with John's comment earlier was that, that's a legal issue. That it's clear that in a situation where the utility has its own easement that pre-exists the right of way, they have more bundles or more sticks in their bundle than you do.
Yeah.
Or they have the, I'm sorry, I'm being flip on that, but it is something that there's a duty for you to deal with. And John, that was your intention at the time, wasn't it?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that's correct. And I think keeping it probably just related to required by law is as good as we're going to get for now, because there's too many, instances and special circumstances. So, but yeah, I'm good with what we've got.
What we had originally, are you okay with the?
No, with the language you've added here, Jeff.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. The next item that was in there that we attempted to address was drainage. I know that has been a source of some consternation. Is there we acknowledge that we need to pass water that's crossing over a roadway, and do it. That would be a project cost. We have had situations where we have not been able to feasibly get the 100-year water flood underneath the roadway. So we've departed from on a specific project. We did depart from the 100-year under the road on that particular design. We also have had some concern expressed where in urban areas where we've got a regional flood or we've got flooding issues, we should pass the road but not try to necessarily solve the drainage problems for the area with the road project. That was, I think, a concern that was expressed. I tried to capture some language in here that seemed to work along those lines. I know that there were some questions about First Avenue, for example, because there had been a study that had at one point in time proposed running a large storm drain up from Navajo Wash to the Rito River on First Avenue. That was something that is a problem wash for the city. But that was something that the RTA at the time was concerned about, whether it should include as a reimbursable item. I think it was settled upon that that they would pass the water underneath the roadway and not try to divert it. But these kinds of questions will come up again. And it just was wondering if this language seemed like it would be a reasonable way to address that concern.
Thoughts from the group? Paul?
Yeah, I think Jim's probably referring to our LaShoya project where we had the value engineer down and we ended up doing an over-under on it. I like this language. I think it provides some flexibility, but the purpose of the RTA is not to fix your local drainage concerns. I mean, that's something you should work out with Pima County Regional Flood Control and your own flood control. But there needs to be flexibility in there. If you say that 100-year must pass underneath, well, then that doesn't create that flexibility, particularly if you have to value engineer. And there's engineering standards, you can only have, 5 feet per second flowing over at, was it 6 inches or 1 foot? One of the two. So whatever that standard is that will be your minimum threshold of whatever the engineering standard is. But this creates that ability to address that.
We pretty comfortable with that, the way this is written? If it is, we can move on. Otherwise,
Jim, and I think it stands to reason that folks are going to want to go back and look at it in more detail. And to Paul's ask earlier on, be able to comment further on it. And so I think we may have iterations of discussion and then review and comment back. But I think what I'm sensing is that as it stands in the draft, it seems reasonable with the caveat that folks get an opportunity to go back, consider it, and provide additional input.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, Chair, I appreciate that comment. Marana's kind of contending with these issues as well as our Tangerine Road goes through state land. And of course, they've made some requests as far as the drainage and how it impacts their property on either side and adjacent to that. So we're looking at some of those. I mean, it's drainage still for the roadway project, but we have some major washes to contend with.
Okay. Okay. All right. One of the other areas that was kind of a challenge for us with RTA 1 was landscaping. One of the things that I think, and I know Sarita made some comments on it, tying it to the actual cost rather than the budget. I have some concerns about that in that, well, first of all, we have in here proposed to continue with the 4% limit on landscaping. We recognize that in some cases, people may want to go beyond that. If they do, bring the money to the table to do that. But 4% would be what the RTA would cover. We probably need to give some definition as to what is landscaping, in terms of, and I would submit that it would be looking at probably the category of costs that are in the bid sheet that we have. I think it's the 9,000s in the bid schedule. But that would be inclusive of irrigation. That would be inclusive of hardscape. It would be inclusive of boulders, etc. One of the things that I think we need to do is we need to stick to it to the budget, because sometimes when bid day comes along, if you have a good price on the civil work and an expensive cost on the budget or on the landscaping, you can end up with problems, even though you've made the best effort to try to adhere to the policy. So just thoughts on that?
Paul?
Would that also include establishment?
Yeah. Yeah, it would include, yeah.
So all inclusive within that bundle.
That's the way I would view it. And we probably look at it again in terms of the bid schedule, what's contained in the typical bid schedule between items 9,000 and 9,200 or something along those lines. So everybody uses pretty much the same bid schedule.
Andy, did you have a thought? Like in between?
I'm thinking, yeah, I don't have a well-formed one other than I'm wondering where 4% came from. And I'm imagining that on most of our larger projects, that's been sufficient to provide the landscaping designed for most of our standards. So it's probably fine, but
yeah.
wondering if it isn't on a smaller project, maybe that has a larger landscapable area. Just wondering if 4% is the right number and how we came to it.
Yeah, well, I can tell you it's an inelegant approach. I mean, we basically agreed to 4%. We looked at a series of different projects. I can tell you that where this came from, or the reason it was escalated as an issue, was because we were dealing with a project that had a lot of relocations of large trees. There was a lot of boxing of trees, and the project actually had, I think at the end of the day, about 27% of the cost was assigned to landscaping of the construction budget. And, that kind of got everybody to stand up and go, the flip side of it is, I think a lot of people have looked at, say, the Downtown Links project and looked at how, there's some pretty extensive treatments in landscaping and some park areas and the like. And you know what? Because it's so structure heavy, it actually comes in under 4%. So, the 4% may not be the right number, but, do we want to regulate this? Do we want to limit this? Do we want to put language in here? I know that it was in the letter that came from Mr. Dilley. that we talk about that. And I think they were at the time, correct me if I'm wrong, I think 4% was something that everybody was pretty well okay with when they realized that was already in the standards.
That is correct.
Okay.
Paul?
Maybe this is an overriding theme for all of these, and that is that through the POP, we set, a standard. However, that standard can be varied project by project, depending upon the consensus of the board ultimately, or the TMC ultimately, that you have a smaller project, it needs more landscaping, and that's actually part of its function. For whatever reason, or drainage is another thing that for whatever reason, that we have a valve in here that allows for that ability to go and petition the board to be able to accommodate the one-offs, so long as it's contained within the overall budgetary constraints of the plan.
And Jim, Dan, to that point, is there language somewhere in here? So I know that on projects within RTA, there have been modifications made, and those have been approved by the RTA board. Do we want to capture what Paul just described in some language in here, not to the extent where it nullifies the standard, but it provides that flexibility for unique situations, extenuating circumstances? Is there language currently in here, or is that something we can consider adding that at least identifies what a path may be for consideration of an alternate to the standard?
That's a great suggestion. I think we need to add that. It does not currently exist. This has been, the language in here has been really kind of a stop where we would not pay beyond that. But I agree. I think we have a lot of unique situations, or every project is unique, but there may be situations where we find ourselves needing to do beyond these limits for good reason, and we need to have a way to address that. That change or that additional funding in a way that is transparent. So we'll look at adding some language, probably at the bottom of this, saying that that we acknowledge that that all projects are unique, and there may be circumstances that justify reimbursements exceeding the limits stated above. In those situations, we'd probably refer it to go through the TMC and then to the board.
Yeah, here's the process moving forward.
Yeah. That seem reasonable? Yeah.
John?
Just if you look at the purpose statement, right at the bottom, it says, the jurisdiction should use these POPs as a guideline. Well, I think we could add language in that covers the RTA board's ability to, respond to specific requests and not try and insert it throughout this document.
Thanks. Other thoughts? Dan?
With that, with RTA Next, we also incorporated contingency with each of the elements, and I think that needs to be part of that discussion with the flexibility as well. And on the flip side, there is some statutory requirements regarding overages that we should probably review and make sure that we're good from a legal perspective. But I think if we apply the appropriate language within the documentation, then I think that should help us to be covered. But all things that we should just consider when we develop that language.
Well, Dan, when you mentioned contingency, it dawned on me, right? HDR has done cost estimates for all these projects. And so as we're defining standards, do they align with what the cost estimates were prepared by HDR? So, right, when we look at landscaping or any of the other components here, and we're setting a threshold to adhere to, does that fit with what HDR used as their assumptions in coming up with those cost estimates?
Would it be beneficial if they were here at the table to be able to confirm one way or the other?
It may be. I think, staff querying HDR in terms of what they use in these items. We talked about bike paths, multi-use paths, right? What was the assumption that HDR used in coming up with that? You know, what width we talked about, what was the design standard that was utilized in coming up with the cost estimate? And so just a validating or confirming check back against those so that we don't adopt something in the standards here that is misaligned with what HDR used in the cost estimating. Dan.
Mr. Chair, with that, Rick Ellis is not here today, but when he returns, he might be able to provide some information on that too, because my understanding is they developed custom estimates for all the roadway element projects. So, you know, something to, again, to consider as far as that contingency is.
Okay, very good.
Okay. Let's see, we did address specifically what we would cover with the wildlife linkages funding. Basically, and this is articulating the practice where basically if we have a drainage structure that is needed for the project and we upsize the cost of the drainage or upsize the drainage structure to accommodate wildlife recommendations, that those wildlife increases would be eligible expenses. So it's a lot more vague in the original language there.
Jim, you also had edits on art above. Did you
Oh,
touch
thank
on
you.
that?
Yes, that's been another one that has been a bit of a challenge, and where it's a challenge is if projects change. And I'll give you an example. Right now we have a contract with an artist. The city has a contract with an artist to do mural work on the Grant Road UPRR crossing. What we're looking at is rescoping the project that will bring the project in more cost effectively. Now, there will be other potential phases of it, but we tied the artist's budget to 1%. Now we're looking at it probably going over the 1% because the project is becoming smaller. These are things that you know, I think we need to recognize that projects do evolve, and you know, if people are going at it in you know, targeting an expense, whether it's landscape or whether it's art, and they're doing it based upon a general budget, you know, they should be held harmless in the event the budget changes and with respect to those particular limitations. So that was where I was trying to go with it. You know, in terms of why I put it in terms of estimated cost at the time of the artist selection.
Mr. Chairman, John.
Are we addressing the broader question that the three jurisdictions raised when they said landscaping and art should be paid for by the sponsoring jurisdiction, meaning no RTA monies?
Yeah, I haven't addressed that with this. No.
Well, I mean, we're
in
setting some standards here,
Yeah.
or talking about standards, but it makes it in the context of RTA funded improvements. So which is it? I mean, I support paying for public art and landscaping as part of the RTA funding, but sounds like the smaller jurisdictions may not.
Well, when we got together and we were looking at this, we were worried about the constraint on the budget. Now that's changed a little bit here. I think we can be a bit more flexible on what our opinion was. But at the time that we were putting that together, we had too much in the basket, and just out of practicality, every project, what's the first thing that gets cut? It's art. Second thing that gets cut is landscape, and that's a universal truth.
Well, part of the reason I'm raising it is, you know, we're trying to limit costs on specific elements and not reimburse for them. So
Right.
Why would we do that? You know, if the jurisdiction is willing to pay it, is what I'm saying. But I mean, and again, I'm arguing that RTA should be able to pay for some of those costs.
And John, I think that's a great point. And Paul, I appreciate the response. And it sounds like this will be an ongoing conversation, right? Not starting with the restricting of the ability to fund those aspects out of RTA. And if, you know, the jurisdictions who participated in those joint comments are comfortable with having this discussion and varying slightly from what was originally suggested, I think we're within a space that we can operate, and certainly would appreciate comments from the town of Sahuarita, town of Marana to this specific point.
I'm not sure we have a comment right now.
Okay.
That's something that we can have ongoing conversation on.
Fair enough. I think we're early on that we won't get too far down any one path that we can't adjust as we go forward. So, Costa.
Yeah, Chair, I think Paul hit it on the head when he mentioned at the time some of these comments were made. I think the environment's changed a little bit, economic climate, and of course as we move forward. So, and I think to go back is something we're definitely have to look at a little bit more in depth and probably group up internally as well as we go through some of these items.
Okay, appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I think this will be an evolution, but it is a great point to raise, John. Appreciate you for doing that.
And perhaps there's at the time that we were putting this together, of course, we were concerned about cost and making the program balanced. And back to Jim's original point when we first started this conversation is that we've been concentrating on what if we get more revenue? What are we going to do with that extra revenue? But there's always that flip side. What if we don't get the revenue? If we don't get the revenue, maybe these are some of those things that do get targeted, both sides of that zero line on the ledger.
And I think to go back to Chair, to go back to the discussion about adding that flexibility, almost like that, design exception or having that when we talk about the art or some of these other elements, that kind of plays into also funding as part of that. But if something does go over budget, then that could be assessed at the time. Is it going to be allowed to be paid for? So I think when we work on that portion, that'll definitely help answer some of those questions.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jim.
Okay. Let's see. We have new sections in here. Basically paragraphs R, S, T, and U. Those were added directly out of the transit pops. So we just added that or took that from the transit portion and put it into the now with the more general pops that we now have or that we're working on.
Jim, if I can ask, in adding those, which I think it's great to condense this down, some of these just simply state what the item is, bus shelters. Whereas if we look for consistency or continuity, throughout that section, others have more detailed descriptions. Does that need to be expanded out, or are we comfortable, just having it state bus shelters? And maybe that one is fine. That
we could expand it to include bus pullouts, but which may or may not both be implemented. I know there's with the RTA 1, there was a real push towards doing bus pullouts, and the expansion of the paved area to allow the bus to be pulled out of traffic. That I know is problematic for the bus operators. It's become more so because once you pull out of traffic, how do you get that bus reintegrated back into traffic safely? And whereas stopping in a lane does create an obstruction of traffic, I think there's room for both. But the bus riders themselves really benefit from the shade associated with the structure, and we may want to, if we did anything, add some landscaping in that area because it's about shade, and it could also include trash receptacles, things like that. We could be more expansive in that.
Yeah, and Jim, just thinking about the discussion we've had up to this point, right? There were details added from the previous version of this to clarify what is and what isn't within each of those categories, and that's I think valuable, so that we don't leave it open to future interpretation. We try to define that to the extent we can. So I think that would be valuable.
Mr. Chair, Jason had his hand up.
Okay, I'm gonna go, Jason, then I'll come back to Paul. Jason?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on the bus pullout item. We're working. I'm on Valencia right now from Mission to Camino de Oeste, Camino de la Tierra. I mean, and one of the items that came up was that as Jim mentioned, Suntran doesn't want bus pullouts on any of the corridors anymore. So, is that, I guess we need to clarify whether or not that's going to be applicable to all jurisdictions and all corridors within the region. I just wanted to bring that up.
I think the way I would approach it is look at creating some language that identifies elements and creates flexibility for the people who are actually designing it to make those decisions, and that these would be eligible for pay. But I'll bring it back to you all, and you guys can tell me what you think of the language, and if you may have other thoughts as this evolves.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Paul?
Two things. One is I think that becomes a design issue. Really, it's on the flow of the traffic. I have a little bit of a concern here when we combine the two on the pots of money which they come out of, because I could see a bus pullout being a roadway element. That's critical for a roadway if it indeed needs that volume to be able to go through, where a bus shelter is a transit element, and making sure that whatever we put in here doesn't leave it too open for interpretation that say bus shelters come out of the roadway monies, and that they come out again, everything's out of the appropriate pot.
Mr. Chair.
Andy?
Someone correct me if I'm wrong or remind me, today in RTA 1, the transit element outside of the capital project, like the streetcar, is primarily funding operating costs, not capital costs. So pullouts and shelters are included in the roadway element costs of a project. Is that correct?
There is actually a sub-element in the safety category for transit bus pullouts. Yeah, and that is not continued into RTA Next. So on these corridors, we probably would be looking at needing to tap now we've also called our corridors multi-use corridors. So I think it's broad enough in its definition to imply that we're going to be expecting transit to be part of that multi-use corridor.
Okay.
Thank you. And I just support your comment that I think largely these are project design decisions. I like the idea of leaving the flexibility for them to be reimbursed, including pullouts and shelters and whatnot, but not a requirement that they be included necessarily in the project design.
Jim, just
we have it noted in E, by the way, pullouts. We went past it.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. And Jim, just organizationally, as you put it together, if there needs to be some clarifying language that, addresses what Andy or Paul, just noted, potentially you could have R be transit related expenses, right? And then have bus shelters be R1, transit contract costs being R2, right? If you need to qualify.
Okay.
For clarity, some of the points that might help.
Good point. And I think to Andy's earlier point, I didn't realize that we had, this is a little bit of a Frankenstein because I dragged stuff from the transit pops and brought them in here. I did not check back to make sure I wasn't being redundant with pullouts higher up in the list. So I may merge the two together, and pullouts, transit stops, and transit hardscape, if you will.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate the effort we've already made. So thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's see. Continuing on down, we good with paragraph 17 was the tough one. What we would then go down to is paragraph 19, where we speak about some of the financial issues that we're going to be dealing with, namely looking at debt service in the future. We don't have much identified in debt service in the RTA plan. I think we've got a fairly modest amount in debt service in the RTA next budget. But we also recognize that there may be a desire to accelerate some projects. There may be some basis for doing it. I know in one of the memorandums of policy that we did with the original RTA and did not make it into the POPs, but was kind of a subset of policy guidance. We talked about recognizing the time value of money, and that it may be judicious for us to invest in something now, even though it's in a future period. And basically, if there's growth in revenue due to inflation or due to just growth in revenue, we could pay back in the future dollars against the existing project costs, and that would cover part of the debt service. So this is I'm gonna kind of not spend too much time on this. Take a look at this and commented on your in the when you have an opportunity to take a look at these.
Okay.
Let's see. We have section 2 is the objectives. There was some language that we added in here. One of the things that we're going to need to look at is the role of the CART committee. So I'd like you all to give some thought to that. We have an existing CART, and whether it sunsets with its current membership in at the end of fiscal year 26, or whether we create a new CART, new members, or keep the existing members moving into RTA next. Those are things that we're going to have to think about. And so I lay that out there, that this is an area for further thought and comment. We do need to look at increasing our tracking, our accountability metrics. I think we're gonna have to develop a whole suite of different reporting measures that we can report out to the public on in the future, as to our delivery, how we're doing with costs, what's happening with our revenue forecast relative to where we thought we'd be and where we are at over time. And if we do make the decision to declare funds over the amount that was budgeted for and move those into the additional funding category that we can then program fund, we need to have a way to describe that and document that at the time. So I'm saying this very inarticulately, but we've got some work to do, and actually we'll be working. Kurt has volunteered to help us with a little subcommittee of the subcommittee to work on coming up with some recommendations on how we can report that information.
Jim, and that's a great segue. Curtis had his hand up, so let me go to Curtis.
Thank you, Carmine. Getting back to the fiscal accountability and the comment about the CART and even the CAC. And excuse me, in my opinion, there was mixed success with both those committees. There was supposed to have been a more more direct connection between the committees and the RTA board. That just didn't happen. I used the word shunted, that both of those committees, their involvement were shunted. And recently I've talked to people in both of those committees, and there was a sense of disappointment on how they weren't involved in the final outcome of the RTA Next plan, and I guess even the final outcome of the RTA 1 plan. So that said, frankly, I think we have too many committees. And it may be possible to expand the role of the TMC to also include that citizen element. If you look at the bylaws for the for our technical management committee. There's an opportunity to have, I think it's like 11 or 14 or something, non-jurisdictional members. And there may be a way of having some additional citizen input into the TMC, which would then integrate both the technical and the citizen stuff in one committee. So just a thought to kind of think as we move forward with this process and what to do with those committees. So that's all I had to say, Carmine. Thank you.
Thanks, Curtis. Want to get a sense from the group. Jim mentioned, and then Curtis also commented that there could be a working group outside of this subcommittee that advances some concepts or options to bring back. Is everybody generally comfortable? I don't want people to come back and go, well, we didn't know that something was being done outside of the formal committee meeting. So everybody reasonably comfortable with that approach? Okay. Yeah, and I think to Curtis's point, there may be certain attachments or fondness for committees that exist, and if we're going to consider combining or reducing, we should do that with full transparency and openness. So if that is an idea before details get too developed, at least bringing the options back, saying we could do this or we could do that, and then getting some direction from the full subcommittee to say, yes, we think this one, go ahead and advance it a little bit further.
Okay. We did have commentary from Beth from Salrita on a number of things. And these have been more recently, including comments on how we use stakeholders in our project development process. And at what point in time we consult with them, and how we do some of our project outreach. These are comments that she's made, thoughts on that. I've highlighted the passages that are associated with those comments. I did not make any changes to the existing language.
Jim, happy to hear input from the members on that. Just doing a time check on, where we stand. We're coming up on, an hour and a half, looking to maybe keep us to 2 hours maximum so that we wrap up by 10 a.m. Maybe if we can go through the remaining sections more in an overview fashion, reserving then the discussion for comments to come back from the jurisdictions after this meeting, and then subsequent discussions. We do have an agenda item on there for future agenda items. I think taking us through and just familiarizing us with the remaining sections of the POP and the areas of discussion that we have ahead of us, I think would be a good use of our time and keep us within, the time frame.
Okay. All right. Very good.
Thank you.
Anyway, so we have in this section, the objectives, we have basically effective and efficient implementation of the RTA plan, fiscal integrity, accountability, transparency, and compliance. Those are that's the components of this. This is a pretty short section. Then we move into general procedures, how we go through programming, our relationship to the tip. I don't know that there's necessarily anything that we need to change in this language, but look at it. Tell me what you think. We do have to circle back and deal with inflation. By the way, we have requested a proposal from Mr. Hammond to get an updated revenue forecast, the one that we did a couple of years ago that we've inflated internally. We actually want to have them do a more formal report. So they're finishing up or have just finished up their forecasting project at the U of A, and now's a good time for us to get an updated forecast from them in $2026 from Eller. We've done that. Looking at how we would deal with potential delays and acceleration. That's something that is contemplated. We actually have not had too many people look at, or some of this was contemplating that we would be further refining when we would start projects within a period. We actually never found that to be something that was useful language to work with. We did talk about accelerating projects and what that would look like if people wanted to do work ahead of the implementation period. How would that be treated? Again, I mentioned deferring a project within the scheduled 5-year construction project. That really didn't turn out to be much of an issue. Reporting, we do have an obligation to report or provide an annual report, put it out to both or to 2 newspapers of general circulation. When we started this, we had the Star and Citizen. Now we have the Star, and we're, I think, using the Daily Territorial. Those are the only 2 print newspapers. So, this is something that's in statute. So, this is something we may need to look at as news media organizations evolve. We do want to make sure that we're putting it out on our websites. That was something that was reinforced. Looking at the committee process. Then we move into project requirements. Looking at and this will need some work, I think, because our categories have changed, our sub-elements have changed. We no longer have the safety element the way it was constituted in the original plan. So we'll have to adjust these. We will need to address enhancements, make sure that if somebody wants to go above and beyond, it's on their dime. And how do we express that? There's a discussion of IGAs in here, local contributions. Then we look at the project authorization. So, basically making sure that we've got everything in the tip, and then going through the intergovernmental agreement process. We also are emphasizing project charters, and the need to have charters so that we have even more of a refinement of the scope of work and who the players are on a project as we're moving forward. Talk about project amendments. Advancement. Again, that's something that I know there's a lot of interest in right now, particularly with the cry for projects that are folks feel are needed now, and yet they may see their project showing up in later implementation periods. And there was one piece of language in here that was talked about. And I know, John, you made a comment on this. If we have a project that we've committed to with discretionary funds, we've gone out and we've gone through a call for projects, and there's a process where project's been selected for funding. If there's no movement on it, once a jurisdiction asks for the money, if they don't start initiating things, do at least an IGA and start a project within 3 years, then we would deprogram the funds. That's something that I think bears some conversation. There may be good reasons for that, but we have had instances where a big tranche of funding went out, people got a lot of projects, and then they never moved. So that's something that we want to be. We may want to have a conversation about if those funds aren't being if they're tied up and then not being put to work. We've got project details talking about what the lead agency's responsibility is. We do have instances where we've got multiple jurisdictions on the current RTA, probably less so in RTA Next, because I don't know that there are too many projects that cross borders, although there are a couple of I mean, if anybody's got cross-border projects, it's going to be the county. You would be the ones most knowledgeable of that. But the number of projects that are multi-jurisdictional is less than there were in the original RTA. So, but it is something that we need to identify a lead agency on, who's going to run the project, and make sure everybody's on board as we're moving forward. And this speaks to that. Speaks to the budgeting, speaks to eligible costs for reimbursement. And let's see. Right of way is an area that there's a lot of interest that's been recently paid on. One of the things that we need to consider is how quickly do we have to, if we do a project and we acquire right of way, we declare some surplus property, how quickly should it go to market? And be clear that if it was from project funds and there's still project responsibilities, any revenue that comes off of the sale of that would roll back to the project first until it was paid off, and then after that, if there were surplus dollars, it would be returned to the RTA for general use. We do have an advanced acquisition manual. We refer to it in here. It's something that you all might want to take a look at. It's a fairly thick document that TR Right Away put forth. I want to say they did that in 2013. And I think a lot of people may not be familiar with it, but even with that, it talks about a lot of process, doesn't necessarily put forth any mandates. One of the things we may want to think about is, again, as I mentioned, how fast should a project surplus property be brought back to market? And let's see. There was some discussion in the original RTA administrative code about investment policies. We have since adopted an investment policy manual. Board has. That's now just referenced. It is no longer an extensive section of this document. We talked again about the eligibility for advanced right-of-way work, what the project closeout process would be like. That's something that I don't know that we've necessarily followed terribly well. We need to be more formal in our closeouts. And then how we deal with surplus funding. We have a section on legal agreements. Fairly extensive section on communications. Basically making sure that we're consistent with branding and that all parties are involved in the communications effort. And then we close it out with definitions. So, and I don't know, there's construction start date seems to be the one area that there's an interest in having some definition on. Beyond that, not a whole lot of changes have been recommended or requested. We did take out some of the, and may still take out some of the definition for the various elements. I think basically just leaving it broad to the RTA projects would be appropriate. And then finally at the end of it, we'd speak to the revision history.
Thank you, Jim. Excellent overview. Thanks for walking us
sorry,
through that.
It's droll. I'm sorry.
I think it's helpful, right? Yes. So that we all know what's contained in here. I think the earlier discussion at the onset was good to get some foundationary thoughts out. So that was helpful. I know, Paul, you had a question.
Yeah, in the communication section, I'd like us to consider to look beyond just the statutory requirements. I think that was one of the issues of RTA one was that, projects may have gotten behind or they're working with particular citizen groups. And there isn't a lot of knowledge in the general public as to why something might be falling behind or something might be accelerating forward. And just having a good communications plan. And I think in the POP is a good place to have that good communications plan that, again, we have to abide by whatever the statutory requirements are, but that doesn't necessarily limit us to that and to do something better than we did before.
Curtis, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Carmine. Related to what Paul was just saying, over the last couple of months, I've been looking at different RTA project websites, and quite a few of them are woefully out of date. And I think as we move forward into RTA Next, we need to update. The jurisdictions need to go back and look at their particular project websites, make sure they're as up to date and correct as possible. And I think there was something in here about jurisdictions maintaining project websites. And as we move forward in RTA Next, I think those websites are really a primary communication tool between the RTA and the public in general, and certainly the voters. And I think, to me, that's really a key portion of the communications program. So, thanks.
Thanks, Curtis. Appreciate that. Maybe if we can, just hear other thoughts, comments, questions from the committee on the review of the review and overview of the POPs before we talk about maybe future agenda topics. Andy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One general comment. I've only gone through this with a loose tooth comb at this point, but I just want to make sure that when it comes to project phases and start dates that we're not precluded from initiating design or right-of-way activity prior to the phase that a project is described on the ballot, because some of our more complicated urban projects could take 3 or 4 years just for right-of-way, several years for design. So if we want to construct in that period, we would necessarily need to start much earlier. So that may already be included.
Thanks, Andy. Other thoughts? Curtis?
Excuse me. Yes, I had one last comment, and that's kind of related to the overall schedule, and this probably is directed to Jim. If we're going to get this done by mid-October, is there intent to have the lawyer review this before it goes to the TMC, and certainly before it goes to the RTA board? Because that, if you're doing some kind of a critical time chart on this, that could make a big difference in when we need to be done with what we're doing.
Mr. Chair, Curtis, that's a great question. I'll review that with Mike as far as the timing of getting our legal attorney involved, but I agree there at some point we'll need to have some legal review.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much.
And to that point that Curtis made, seeing maybe at our next meeting what a timeline looks like, right? We've reserved on our calendar Wednesdays going forward, but what is the layout of target dates that we have to meet in order to achieve that October completion? Jim, from the discussion about allowing the members to go back and review, when would it be ideal for you to get those comments back ahead of us meeting again next? And we'll assume that we're meeting next week is what I would suggest, but how would that lay out for you?
Mr. Chair, I know that this is a fairly thick document, all things considered. What I'm going to ask is that by next Wednesday, we get comments back. What I would like to do on next Wednesday's meeting is not look at this, but rather look at project descriptions.
Okay.
And that way we can have something that, ideally, I'd love to have all the project descriptions reviewed at that meeting. And if we can move those along, that'd be a big, check off on the development of this code.
Okay. Sound good, John?
Are we sending out the current descriptions as we've got them for review, or?
I have What I will do is I will send out all of the current descriptions. I'm still getting some back. What I will do is I will send them out by Friday.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Dan?
Some other considerations when it comes to our schedule is that in addition to updating the POPs, we also have the admin code itself, and as Jim mentioned, the project description. So it may be helpful to better understand what the full extent of the admin code review is as well. So perhaps we can provide a little bit of an overview to that next Wednesday as well. And then from there, we can decide based on the comments received and the additional extent of the admin code review, what works best for the group as far as future meetings, if it's going to be on a weekly basis, or if we want a little bit of time for additional review and then do a charrette or something of that nature. It's completely up to the group, but just a food for thought.
Paul?
Then we have a TMC meeting next Wednesday.
Boy. The management committee. We do have management committee meeting next Wednesday. So let's, do we have alternative availability for this group to meet next week, perhaps?
So may I ask, do we anticipate a lengthy management committee meeting?
I think this one's supposed to be short, isn't it?
That's a very good question. I was of the impression that it would be pretty small, pretty short.
And it's going to be virtual. I'm sitting in for Jeff. That's why I know about it.
I believe primarily we're just looking at an administrative tip amendment. So it doesn't seem like it's going to be very lengthy. Any thoughts?
Mr. Chair. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so next week, I believe we're only going to hear one action item, is my understanding, and maybe one or two other information items at the management committee meeting. So it should be very brief. Thank you.
And that's scheduled to start at 8:30?
That I don't know for sure. Does someone else look that up, please?
Virtual at 8:30.
Would we be so bold as
Issa says
they're
8:30.
scheduling this to happen immediately following that, or 9 a.m.? And is everybody comfortable doing it virtual? Or would we prefer to meet? I just say that because I just heard the PAG Management Committee meeting is virtual.
I think it'd be too tough for us to do it virtual for those of us on the outskirts.
Okay.
And scamper down here in person.
Okay, so if we set this subcommittee meeting at 9 a.m. on Wednesday virtual,
Immediately following the management committee.
At or after 9. Yeah.
Okay.
okay. So homework is, Curtis.
Yeah, I just, a quick question. Jim, did you send out the administrative code to us already or a link to it? Because I think we were talking the other day, you said it was like, as long as War and Peace, that it was a lengthy document.
I will send out a link to everybody. It's available on our website, but I'll send a link.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Okay, so just to summarize on due outs, then members review the POPs and get comments back to the team here by Wednesday, which would be the 10th, September 10th, that review the project descriptions and be prepared to have discussion, a working discussion and edits of those at our next meeting. Also then on September 10th, if the team, the RTA team can help fashion a calendar that includes all of the milestones that we have to achieve between now and when we're due to complete this task for review next time, that'd be great. And then we'll get a review and overview of the administrative code at our next meeting. Did I miss anything?
No.
Good. Okay. Any other thoughts, comments, questions? All right. I think we just covered future agenda items. We're good. All right. We have adjournment. Anyone object to adjourning? Oh. All right. So be it. We're adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if we was huddle on this draft of calendar, now, I'm happy to do that.